Hey there, soulmates. We are back at it on this Valentine's Day. It is February 14th, but love is definitely in need of love today, as we have plenty to talk about today. Welcome to FOXSOUL's Black Report. I'm Courtney Hicks.
And I'm Nicordelai Corte. We're bringing you the stories that impact our people.
Indeed, it's our news, it's our views, and our voice. Topping the news today, a senseless and tragic shooting spree on the campus of Michigan State University takes the lives of 3 students. Police say 5 others remain in critical condition. According to investigators, the suspect died from a self-inflicted, that is, gunshot wound off campus.
Truly has been a nightmare that we are living tonight, but we have remained laser focused on the safety of our campus, our students, and the surrounding community. We are relieved to no longer have an active threat on campus, while we realize that there is so much healing that will need to take place after this.
And counselors are being made available for students and staffs. There will be no classes or other campus-related activities today or tomorrow, as the investigation into the shooting and the shooter is still ongoing. But Nicordelai, you have some details about the suspect right now.
That's right, Courtney. You know, overnight, police finally dropped the name of the shooter, who has no known connection to the school or the campus. He's 43 years old, and the suspected shooter is Anthony McRae. He was found off campus early Tuesday morning, and before officers could close in on him, McRae shot himself. Now, McRae has a history with gun violence. In fact, he was arrested in 2019 on a gun-related charge. And just from reading a little bit about the story, some of the neighbors suspected that something was a little off with McRae. Mm-hmm. He was known to sort of be a little bit of a loner, and he would engage in target practice in his backyard on a routine basis. There were a number of neighbors that reported, seeing him engage in target practice just last summer.
You know, this was absolutely devastating. It's still horrific. It's still hard to process. I attended Michigan State University, very familiar with these buildings. Berkey and the Student Union sit off the main road, which is going to be Grand River. And so that's a lot of the scene that you saw last night. But we went out to dinner last night, and as soon as we walked in the door, these shootings started right after 8, within that half hour between 8 and 8:30. And my phone just started blowing up. I'm like, what is going on? And it was my brother telling me that there was an active shooter on campus, and then you start to see videos of the students running for safety. You see the alert that says run, hide, or fight. So it was at that point that I knew it was critical. I had friends and sorors who have students up there now. Their children are up there now. And so it was very emotional last night. I even saw some local coverage where anchors who have kids at Michigan State were on air doing their job and texting with their children. I know that the authorities aren't going to release names until later on in the day, but right now we do know, according to reality star Delicious, her niece, her social media handle is Ariel Diamond, is one of the 3 victims who are victim in this shooting. And this again is confirmed via Delicious and her family via a post. There'll probably be more of an official statement from MSU authorities come today, as is reported. Just heartbreaking to think that you send your beautiful baby to school, and this is what happens.
So young and so beautiful. My goodness. And just for you, real quick, I mean, you're an MSU grad. You know, what is it like to watch, folks on the campus that, you spent so much time on, to watch, folks really, in trauma and reacting in horror? I mean, this is real fresh. This just happened yesterday.
Yeah, so to actually know and be familiar and have, been on that campus. I was there late 80s, early 90s. The campus has changed a lot, but buildings like Berkey, that's an older part of the campus that's been there since the inception. The Union, where we all gather. Michigan State folks around here knows Michigan State has the best ice cream in the world. And that's a building that you go gather and have fun. You catch up with your friends. You go study in between school. so it's shocking. I still can't believe, that it has happened at Michigan State University, because you're so used to it happening to other people on other campuses in other schools. And when it hits close to home, the chief of police for the Michigan State University campus, good friend of mine, he's actually my generation of Spartans. I saw him last night, and the deputy mostly spoke, and he kind of, stayed in the background. But I know there's a lot on him right now. Folks have been reaching out to him because he's like our boy, our guy. It's like, what is happening? All the frightened parents are what really jarred me last night. All of my sorors who have kids up there, because now we're at an age now where our kids are there in college. And it was just devastating to see. And I don't know how you begin to go back to school. How do you go back to class? That was a classroom. How do you go back to class and study and focus, with this happening, or with a classmate that was just there the night before, not there anymore. I know there's going to be a lot of visuals tonight on other college campuses. I'm not quite sure what Michigan State has planned, if anything. I know I've been talking and texting with people, and they're just still in a state of shock.
Well, you know what? It's okay for people to feel that sense of shock, and
it is.
We certainly feel it.
And it's tough to talk about today. And then when you get the news that you're not too far once removed from one of the victims, and those other 5 victims are still, or ones who were injured, are still fighting for their lives in Sparrow Hospital, which is the big medical center up there. It's difficult to talk about. It really
it's
is.
difficult. It's difficult. Well, gun violence is a difficult topic to talk about, and we are certainly talking about it. Gunviolencearchive.org keeps track of all reported gun violence in the nation since the start of the year. Listen to this. There's been over 60 mass shootings. This is madness, including last night's. So we are tired of talking about the lives lost, and it's time to discuss how to prevent these shootings and what action we can take right now.
Yeah, so here to help us learn about things we can do is Wisdom Cole, Director of Youth and College Division for the NAACP. We hate it has to be under these circumstances, but we do welcome you to the Black Report. Wisdom, thanks so much for taking some time out of your busy day. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
So, Wisdom, tell us, what were your thoughts about last night when you heard the news, and especially when you learned that the perpetrator was a black man? I mean, oftentimes when we see, these mass shootings and when they're active shooter situations, they typically are not black folks, but in this case, it was different.
This situation is a tragedy. I'm glad that students are safe, but I know they're shaken. This has become all too common in our time and era, where we have become experts in seeing this happen all too often. Going to school should never be a life-threatening endeavor, but this is America, and apparently every day that we leave the house, we must fear for our safety. And so when I think of the situation, really recognizing that there is a need for our legislators to hear us out when we talk about safe and sensible gun laws. Recognizing that young people are facing this, and the mental, emotional, and physical trauma that continues to carry with them is a heavy burden, right? As you said, how can people continue going to class, taking exams, studying for midterms? All those things become more difficult because the entire time you came there just to be a student, to figure out your future. And this being something that is consistent in our narrative, right? I was a former high school teacher and have also been through a school shooting. And so these things are becoming all too prevalent in our day and age.
Wisdom, when you talk about the mental health argument, the whole idea of will there be a fair shake when it comes to this particular black gunman? We know now that, according to his sister, he was pretty transient. He would go from city to city, living in shelters. She also talked about how he was socially isolated, and she hadn't even seen her brother since their mother's funeral back in 2020. Talk a little bit about the mental health argument and how or how not valid this argument can or cannot be.
That is an argument, but regardless of that aspect, there's things that we can do to ensure that our campuses are safe, right? We can't always account for everybody else and the things that they do and what's going on in their lives, but we can make sure that we ban guns on college campuses. We can make sure that we improve crime statistics. We can make sure that there is a requirement for universal background checks, and we can create evidence-based crisis assessments and prevention programs in schools, right? This is a real reality happening every single day, right? Just as you were saying, there's actually been 67 mass shootings that have happened this year alone. That's more mass shootings than days this year, right? Rather than assessing the person, let's ensure that we are protecting our students.
And speaking of protecting our students, Wisdom, we know that Governor Whitmer in the State of the State address here in Michigan called for universal background checks, for red flag laws that have become increasingly more popular across the country. Tell us a little bit about what we can do right now to follow the lead of the NAACP Youth and College Division. What can we do right now to make change? Because we are so tired of this. We are tired of reporting on this. And, people across this country are so tired of experiencing this, the heartbreak, the heartache every single day. Give our soulmates a call to action starting right here in Michigan.
Well, first, I want to make sure that everybody is checking in with themselves and making sure that they are good. These things, again, are becoming all too common. And oftentimes we begin to normalize situations like this. This is not normal. This is not normal. And so we need each and every single one of you to continue the work, right? Folks have voted, people have protested, people have provided comprehensive recommendations, and we must continue to do everything in our power to advocate for substantial changes needed to protect our communities. We want everybody to call on the members of Congress to act now. How many more examples before we actually put our words into actions, right? We need to make sure that we are keeping our elected officials accountable and ensuring that young people are safe when they are on their college campuses, when they're in their K through 12 schools, and ensuring that we have a safer future for all.
Yeah, continue to call them out. Indeed, Wisdom, thanks so much for joining us today and giving us your perspective and insight. We'll definitely have you back to talk some more, and we appreciate you, and stay safe. And thanks so much for joining us. All right, moving on here. Do y'all remember Chinedu Okobi? He was the Morehouse grad who died by the hands of police for jaywalking. His family has finally reached a settlement in the case. Now, the settlement between his family and the Northern California County was reached back in August, but has just become public. Okobi died of cardiac arrest after physical exertion, restraint, and electromuscular disruption. A pathology report from the coroner's office stated this. Now, California County will now pay $4.5 million to the family. However, no deputies were charged in this death.
I still can't believe no deputies were charged. I mean, at least they got $4.5 million. That is something, but in my view, not nearly enough. But moving on to a 55-year-old man who will spend 9 years behind bars for banana peels. That's right, y'all. I said banana peels. That's because he used those peels to racially harass his black neighbors. So listen to this. Police documents say that Robert Iverson pleaded guilty to criminal harassment, a criminal civil rights violation, and more than 100 weapons charges. That's 100. The straw that broke the camel's back is when his new neighbors from Haiti moved in. Now, police say that they found a banana peel over 40 times over the course of several months. Police even caught him in the act a few times. Can you believe this is happening in 2023? Somebody is leaving banana peels, in their neighbor's yard as a point of harassment, intended to create racial intimidation, right? That is what's happening in Massachusetts in 2023. And, don't think the stuff is not connected, right? Today it's a banana peel, and tomorrow it's something that's far more threatening before somebody loses their life.
All right, so let's go to Texas to talk about what's going on, as many people are a little pissed off at a policy change by the governor. Gregg Abbott is telling state agencies diversity should not be considered in employment hiring practices because it's illegal. Now, this comes from a memo sent by Abbott's office this this week. The memo allegedly says the use of diversity, equity, and inclusion policies violate federal and state employment laws, and hiring cannot be based on factors other than merit.
So basically, they're trying to make diversity, equity, and inclusion illegal. And we're okay with that? No, we shouldn't be okay with that. But we also shouldn't be surprised, because that's the same thing that Ron DeSantis is doing in Florida with the Stop Woke Act, and that what folks are trying to do in South Carolina. And so don't think what's happening in Florida isn't happening to you. Now from Florida to Milwaukee, where black voters in Milwaukee say that they're not surprised about recent revelations on Republican strategies targeting minority communities. During last year's elections, an election commissioner boasted about low turnout in predominantly black and Latino neighborhoods, and an audio recording surfaced of Trump's Wisconsin campaign team, get this, laughing about their efforts to reach black voters in 2020. Now, many black voters have felt targeted by Republicans for years, with public displays of ignoring their priorities or actively trying to keep them from voting. Wisconsin Republicans, on the other hand, deny suppressing votes, but advocates accuse them of pushing policies to do so.
So not only are we talking about voter intimidation, but now our votes are a joke. Now you're gonna act like you don't need our votes. Historically, we've seen it's been laid out time and time again. Get Biden on the phone and ask him about how powerful that black vote is. In particular, black women who strolled to the polls to put his behind in the presidency. So, listen, they can chuckle and chat and think what they want to think, but when it comes down to that vote, the stats don't lie, and some of these politicians, whether they're black or white, will tell you how important that black vote is. So these people are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to say what they're going to say. But when it is time to cast that vote, when it is time to show up at the polls, regardless of what we got to do, we got to sneak a bottle of water in, some snacks, go pick up folks. We have to continue to show up, because we can't not allow these folks for us to think that our vote does not matter. It absolutely does, and always has. That is why they go to the extent that they go to make us believe that it doesn't.
You're right. Our vote is our voice. And if our voice didn't matter, they wouldn't be working so hard to diminish our vote.
That's right.
That's the connection. Mm-hmm. Milwaukee's over 70% black? Mm-hmm. Surprise, surprise. They're trying to suppress the vote in Milwaukee. And so we can't allow that, soulmates. We can't allow it.
At all. All right. France's defense minister has criticized the way French soldiers are depicted in the Marvel Studios film Black Panther: Wakanda Forever as false and misleading. Now, the scene shows a group of villainous mercenaries resembling French troops being brought before the UN in Geneva. France withdrew its troops from Mali last year after 9 years of fighting against Islamist extremists. The country also is withdrawing troops from Burkina Faso this month at the demand of the West African country's military rulers. So, Nicola, soulmates, do you think it's appropriate for fictional movies and TV shows to reference and depict real-life military forces or groups, especially when it could be seen as inaccurate or offensive? Me over here, I feel like if it's fictitious, not so much so, because it is just that. It is fictitious. You've got, artistic license to sort of kind of, tell the story how you want to tell the story. I think if it's a documentary, something that's being, put out there to mark history in some kind of way, absolutely. There has to be accuracy. So for me, it boils down to, does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? And for me, it just depends on what the art is. This being fictitious, I can understand the concern, but it's a fictitious story. Doesn't bother me as much as if it were a documentary. And think about how poorly we've been portrayed throughout history, whether it's fictitious or documentaries, and what we've, had to deal with as far as, how we've been seen and what filter has been used to portray black people. So, this is nothing new for us.
Yeah, I mean, this was strange to me. It was strange to see the French minister, devote so much energy around this and tweet this out, because the legacies of colonialism are real, right? And to me, his tweet seemed tone deaf to that. Yes, the French, have provided military support in places like Mali and places like Burkina Faso, and some support even, fairly recently. But you know, I think he's over his skis on this. You know. It is not.
Skis?
It is
Okay.
not that serious.
It's
I think
not.
he's put a little too much heat on it. He got to take some heat off of that because, like you said, you know, this is a fictitious movie, right?
Yeah,
it's inspired by history. It's inspired by a lot of things, you know. But you know, this is not a documentary, and so
it's too much
cool off,
going
Mr.
on
French Minister.
in the world for this to be a point
Cool
of
off a little
concern.
bit.
And also, you know, Wakanda Forever right now is the most downloaded movie on Disney Plus. So folks are watching it whether they agree with this point or whether this point is frivolous or not. So there you go.
Yeah, well, still ahead, a trick to how some businesses are seeing an increase in sales.
Plus, one of the Kardashians is in hot water this Black History Month. We'll tell you all about it. You're watching Fox Soul's Black Report.
I'm telling.